Exapunks is a puzzle game from Zachtronics, which, if you're into a certain vein of puzzle game, will probably tell you almost everything you need to know about it. For those who aren't familiar, Zachtronics makes programming games, sometimes with the programming abstracted behind a level of art and metaphor, as in Opus Magnum, and sometimes with the programming right out in the open, as in TAS 100 or this game. Exapunks drapes its programming puzzles in cyberpunk future we thought we'd get in the 80s trappings, and an aesthetic that I really love. It's not the best Zachtronics game, I think, which is an honor I would still probably give to Spacechem, nor the most accessible, which I think is probably Opus Magnum, but it is my favorite, and a lot of that has to do with the aesthetic and the music and the feeling that it manages to evoke in me. This screen and this sort of audioscape that they've constructed here is a great example of what I mean. I've just been sitting here at this screen figuring out what I want to say here for probably the better part of an hour now, and it's been lovely. The occasional traffic noise over what sounds like a wet road outside, with the twangy guitar music, the city at night visible out the window with this sort of blocky, cartoony look. There's something about this all just gives me a certain feeling like, I don't know, lonely but at peace, I guess? It's hard to put into words, and also I sound like a crazy person trying, so why don't we just talk about what the game actually is? Now, this is a puzzle game, so obviously I don't want to spoil too much, but we are going to show one or two puzzles here, so that I can talk about why I love this thing, and what I think it gets extremely right. There are a lot of programming games, or maybe not a lot, but there's a lot more programming games now than there used to be. And while a lot of those games are good logic puzzle games, a lot of them elide certain parts of the experience of being a programmer that I think are... It's a real shame. It's a real shame that those things get left out so much. And this game does a really good job of bringing some of that stuff into focus. I guess let's just... Here, I'll show you. Let's get into our Sawayama Z7 Turbolance, because, like I said, it's a little bit cyberpunk. So here we have our desktop, our personal organizer, which keeps all of our puzzles in it, plus our fake IRC client, because there are definitely some of the aesthetic elements of this game are like a love letter to a certain era of computing. Let's pop into this puzzle. So this is a fairly early game puzzle. I didn't want to spoil anything too hard or interesting, so I wanted to do something pretty early on. In this puzzle, we must erase the record of our friend Gas's debt to this copy shop. So he made a lot of copies at Zebro's Copies and is having trouble paying off the money he owes them. Fortunately, we have some skills that can help him with that. So we have to zero out his balance in the customer database, which is file 200 here in their host, and append a payment to the payment log in file 201 with today's date and the exact amount of his prior balance. Basically, what we're doing here is we're breaking into this system and we're making it look like he already paid them. Here you see our host in a slightly darker color. We have a file in it that has what we know Gas's customer ID with them to be. I assume because he gave it to us. So that's good, but we don't really have enough information to solve this puzzle, do we? Like, there's this window over here, and I can just type whatever I want into it. That's not gonna work. So, we have to do what any programmer does in a situation like this, which is look at the documentation. This is a really, really, really important part of being a programmer. Almost no programmer has like an intimate, exhaustive familiarity with the language they work with. But every good programmer knows how to look stuff up. That's a lot of what you learn in college, is how to be good at looking stuff up. So let's pop out to the documentation, which is in this hacker zine called Trash World News. This is what Gast was copying. He ran up all those fees. He distributes a hacker zine, which they give it to you in an actual external PDF outside the game, and then they provide instructions here in case you would like to print it out and staple it together and have an actual real-world zine, which I think is super cool. We will be using the PDF for the purposes of this thing here, so let's see if I did this right. Hey, that's about the right screen region. So this is Trash World News, the underground computer magazine. A lot of this is background information, just sort of like world building. There are things about this, though, that feel very true to life. There was definitely a period in my life that had several zines in it, and almost all of them had a manifesto of some kind in them. But what we're really looking for here is not background world building stuff, but language documentation. So there's some explanations of sort of the basic metaphors of the game. This is what hosts look like, this is what they mean, there's files and registers, and we'll get to all this in a minute. What I want really right now is, first of all, language reference. So this tells us all of the commands that we can use, how they work and what they do. And there's also, as it said in the book here, or as it said in the level description here, a page that is specifically about Digicash point-of-sale systems and how to screw with them. So, let's see. The customer database, usually file 200. Hold on, let's go back to the puzzle first, shall we? Let's get back into that system, or our idea of what that system will look like, and fiddle with it a little bit. So, we have a customer database, usually a file with the label 200, that stores a list of customers with 3 values for each customer. You can see that over on the left side of the screen right now. Customer ID, dollars owed, and cents owed. Boy, it looks like gas debt is fairly significant there, doesn't it? We also have a transaction log in file 201, which stores a list of transactions with 4 values for each entry: the date, the customer ID, the dollars paid, and the cents paid. There's also probably a real-time clock module which is connected to the primary host and used for time-stamping the transactions. And then some other stuff that I'll just spoil it for you right now is not going to be particularly relevant to what we're doing here. You can see in this case, they actually have their copiers hooked up to their system. So we could, in theory, infiltrate these copy machines and probably force some stuff into the copy register and have them spit out paper with whatever we want on it. I don't know that that's particularly relevant to our goals here, but I bet if we did that, it would show up on the Digicam feed. They also have a terminal over here with another file and an exa of their own. So these things here, exas, are not actual tiny robots. Remember, everything we're doing here is code. But these are just sort of like a metaphor for visualizing what is happening with our code. What is this file, 297? It looks like maybe this is a paper order or something. This is not relevant to our goals. Let's focus up here. We're going to do the thing we're here to do now. We can hack the planet later. So, in order to solve our friend Gas's dilemma, we need to get into this file, find his entry, which we can see right here, zero it out, and then append a payment. Now, the naive version of this, right? I'm gonna shortcut looking at the documentation because I do know the commands, obviously. We're gonna jump over this link 800, put our exa in their system. The naive version of this is we could just grab that file. We can see where the entry is, right? So just find that entry and zero it out and do the thing and be gone, right? But this is another important programming concept that I feel like a lot of programming games don't really bother to show off. This is not the only puzzle that our solution has to be able to solve. This is one particular test case. You can see down here, the test run thing says there are 100 different test runs, 100 different test cases that our solution has to be able to solve to ensure that it will be able to do whatever it is we needed to do out in the real world. So like in test run number 2, Gas's entry is in a different place and it's different numbers. And also probably the time and date are different. And so we have to write not just a solution that will solve the one version of the problem in front of us, but a general solution that will solve all problems of this type, all problems within certain constraints, right? We know that this will always be the shape of their network, there will always be these files with lists of information in them, and we have to provide a generalized solution for that problem. So, let's do that. Alright, we're going to need a couple of things in order to solve this problem. First of all, we're going to need to be able to interact with these files, get information out of them, and put information into them. So, let's look at our documentation for that. Let's just go learn a couple of commands real quick, shall we? So first of all, file manipulation. We have to grab files to have our exas interact with them. And then the seek command is going to move the file cursor forward or backward. We're going to need this because the position of the file cursor is tremendously important when trying to write data into files. We're also going to need... Well, hold on. let's just start working, and I'll fill you guys in as we go, because I'm pretty sure I remember what to do. I'm gonna be honest with you, I solved this puzzle for the last time several months ago at this point, so we'll see if I'm as sharp as I would like to be here live on camera in front of everybody. I'll tell you what, I think we're gonna need 2 X's for this program, or for this solution, or at least I would like to use 2 X's. So we have XA and XB here. XA in our own host is going to grab this file, 300, and copy the value that the file cursor is looking at into the M register. So you can see each EXA has a limited number of memory registers in it. When we pick up the file, the F register will just be the F register is how we access the stuff that's in the file. So if we do this right now, if we just step through this, you can see it grabs the file. File 300 is now attached to XA, and it copies the value that the file cursor was on into the M register. Now you notice the M register is marked as global. That means that all of our X's can access it. This is a way of passing information back and forth between our X's. Also, you'll notice that XB has disappeared. That's what happens when an EXA runs out of instructions. It just disappears. That's important for us because one of our mission goals on every mission is to leave no trace. It has to look like we were never here. So we got to make sure that our X's all vanish. So let's get back here. So we can copy the information into the M register. Let's have EXA B traverse link 800 here, which will move it up into this host. And it needs to grab file 200, and then we need to find this entry. We need to find the entry that has this information in it. So the first thing we're going to do is copy the value of M into our X register. This is just a local general use memory register. We just want XB to have this information because it'll make it faster to look through this thing. So now that you have this, you want to compare the value that the file cursor is looking at with this number, which is now in our X register, to see if they're the same. If they are the same, we need to start editing that entry. If they're not, we need to keep looking, right? So we can do that with the test command. Let's jump back over to our documentation. The test command allows us to use a conditional to evaluate the relationship between 2 values. We can use equals or less than or greater than. We do the test, and if the conditional that we've set up is true, it sets the T register to 1. So otherwise, it sets the T register to 0. So you can see each EXA has a T register for storing that testing value. So we want to test whether the current value under the file cursor is the same as that value that we've copied into X, which is Guest's customer, customer ID. This is a good start. I can't remember very, very basic terms here. And then we're gonna have to do that repeatedly in case it turns out not to be right? So let's step through this here. You can see we copy the value from file 300 into the M register. Then we copy the value from the M register into the X register where it now lives. And you'll notice here, the file cursor is on the next value. Anytime you interact with the F register, it also moves the cursor forward. So here we did that test. It turned out that our conditional was not true, so T remained 0, and the file cursor moved forward. So we need to keep testing until this condition turns out to be true, right? So we're going to need a loop. We create a loop by setting up a marker here, and then using some conditional branching statements. And here we'll look at the documentation real quick for an example of this, or for the explanation here. We can set up labels in the code and then jump to those labels. T-jump and F-jump are special conditional jumps that only operate when the T register has a certain value in it. So, and I apologize if it feels like I'm going at kind of a remedial pace here. I assume there are people watching this video who have never done any programming before. Alright, so let's look at this. So we get the correct value into the X register, right? And then we test, and it turns out not to be right. So it turns out F did not equal X, so the T register remains 0. And then we, because the test failed, jump back to the read loop mark, and then execute the test again. And every time we execute the test, we're accessing the F register, so the file pointer is moving forward. And eventually we do the test, and our conditional is true. F does, in fact, equal X. The test marker is set to 1, and then we run out of instructions, and our exa will probably delete itself, yeah. Alright, that's a good start. We have a good start to a solution here. So once we know for sure, here we'll add some extra white space here just to make the different stages of our process clearer. Once we know for sure that we've found gas sentry, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to zero out the two numbers following it, right? So, how do we write to files? Hey, documentation, help me out here. We probably just use the copy command, right? Like I said, it's been a couple of months. Yeah, all right. We probably just use the copy command. So let's do that. Let's say we copy 0 to F, and then do that again, because remember, the first time we do it, it's going to move the file pointer forward, or the file cursor forward. So that should set both of these numbers to 0, I think. Let's just verify that that is in fact what happens. Yep, okay, there we go. Step 1 complete. We have zeroed out his balance in the customer database. But that's not good enough. An employee of the copy shop might look at this and go, hey, didn't that guy owe us like $400? How come he suddenly doesn't owe us money anymore? So we also have to make it look like he paid at some point. So let's see here. How are we going to do this? We need to, first of all, get the current date. The current date has to be inserted into the payment file. Then we need his customer ID. Then we need to put in those numbers that we just zeroed out. So actually, we probably have to get those numbers into memory first. All right. How are we going to do this? Okay. So at this point in the process, right here where the cursor is, we know that we have found the cursor, the file cursor is on the amount of dollars he owes, right? So we need to remember this value. Let's copy this into X. Then we need to remember his cents owed, so we'll copy that into T. And you start to see the problem. We really have very limited amounts of memory to work with here. This is kind of a tricky problem. Then we're going to seek with the file cursor back 2 spaces. Because we read here and then it moved forward, and then we read here and it moved forward. Now we have to go back and copy in the zeros. And so now we have his dollars owed and his cents owed. Then we want to... we have to move up to this module, this host. We have to get the current date, put it into the file. We need another memory register, right? Fortunately, we have the M register. We can just use that. We can have the other exa hold that for a moment. So we'll go link 801 to maneuver us up to the clock register, or the clock module. And then we will copy the contents of the date hardware register into register M. Then we'll go back, pick up the payment log, seek to the very end of it. I believe we are told, let me see where that is. I believe we're told that seek 999, yeah, here it is, in the documentation. If seek would move the file cursor past the beginning or end of the file, it will instead be clamped, so it'll stop when it hits the beginning or the end. Thus, you can use values of -999 or 9999 to reliably move to the beginning or end of the file. We're just seeking to the end of the file because we want to append the payment on the end. We want it to look like it's the last thing that happened, because it might be the case, right, that no payments were made on this date before we did this. All of the payments might be from earlier dates. So if we put this anywhere other than the end of the file, the payment log will look like it's out of order, which is evidence that somebody screwed with it, right? But we know that no payments can have come in that were later than today because time is linear. All right, so we seek to the end of this file and we copy the value of the M register into the file, and then we copy the value of the X register into the file, and then, oh no, wait, hold on, that's not right. We copy the value of the M register into the file. That puts in the date, but then we have to put in the customer ID, right? So XA over here is still holding this file, but the file cursor has moved forward once. So we want to seek backward one space, and then I'm not sure if this is gonna work. Well, hold on. We'll just try it and we'll see if it breaks. So we got to recopy his file or his customer value back into M. So we copy from M to F again. Then we copy the number of dollars he owed and then the number of cents that he owed. And in theory, that does it. Let's step through and see if it breaks. My concern here is that I don't 100% remember what's going to happen when we copy date to M. It's going to stay in this. Yeah, it should be fine. Should be fine. So we've grabbed the correct file now, and we have the customer ID in our memory, and we are searching for it. We've located it. So we copy the number of owed dollars and the number of owed cents into our memory registers. We go back 2 spaces in the file and zero those numbers out. Oh, I forgot to drop. We have to drop this file at some point. I believe the drop command does not require any arguments because you can only be holding one file. Let's see here. Yes, drop the currently held file. Okay. Honestly, this feels a lot like real programming to me. The constantly looking back at the documentation and then stepping through and then realizing you forgot something and then... Okay. So we're looking for the value, we found the value, we copy the important information out of the file, we go back and remove that information, drop the file, go over here, get the date which we copy into the M register. Okay. So here's the problem. There's some weirdness with the M register. Yeah, we're gonna have to do this slightly differently. I think what I have to do here... So when we copy a date into the M register, it seems like it's stopping our exa, right? This guy's already got something in M. Yeah, and our guy just stops moving. That's frustrating, because he's so close to being done. Let's try something. Let's try grabbing that M value from him. So if you tell an exa to copy out of the M register and there's nothing in it, they will wait patiently until something gets in it. So right here, we copy the date into the M register, and the other guy copies it out, and now XB is free to move again. Okay, apparently he really doesn't want to have something sitting in his M register. That's fine, we can do that. So, is there a better way to do this then? Because this feels kind of kludgy. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't 100% understand the restriction we're facing here. Maybe there's something to clarify it in the documentation. Okay, the M register controls an exa's message passing functionality. When an exa writes to the M register, the value will be stored in that exa's outgoing message slot until another exa reads from the M register and receives the previously written value. Numbers and keywords can be transferred in this way. If an exa writes to the M register, it will pause execution until that value is read by another exa. So we don't really have three clean memory registers here, right? This M1 has some weird restrictions. That's alright, we can solve this with just a little bit of what I would describe as clumsy code. We'll go ahead and do that copy. And then we'll just copy the value right back. This doesn't feel super professional to me, but... So we want to copy the date, which got passed to us, into X, then copy it back, then this guy will copy the date out of the M register to the file. And then we need to copy guest customer ID out of the thing again. We already executed the seek, but it probably will be clearer from a program flow standpoint if we put this down here. All right, so we seek back in the file to get guest customer ID again, then copy that into the memory, into the M register. We get that. Okay, I think this is a real solution now. So then we would want to drop the file, and then, like I said, leave no trace, right? So there is a command to just delete an exa, I believe. Although actually, yeah, kill. No, kill is wrong. Halt. Halt terminates this exa and drops any files it may be holding. So, oops, that's not how I do that smoothly. There we go. So instead of using the drop command, we could just halt, we'll drop the file and delete the guy, and XA could live forever because it's in our host. Like, well, this guy being alive doesn't leave any evidence in their system. We'll just disconnect and this whole thing will be gone. So I think we've got here a solution. Let's step through it and see if I'm right. Alright, so we both grab the file, we copy guest customer ID into the M register, which then gets copied into the X register. We loop through looking for it. When we find it, we copy his money owed, then go back and zero out his money owed. Put that file right back where we found it like nothing happened. Go over there, get the date, copy it into the M register, which then gets copied out and copied back in a way that feels real clumsy to me. Pick up file 201, seek all the way to the end of it, copy the date out of the M register, and then when we execute, when the XB hits this command, it'll just sit here and wait until something is in the M register for it to copy. So XA goes back one space in its file, copies that again, that gets then written into the file, and then we copy the value out of X and the value out of T, and there we go. That looks just like a payment log that indicates that Gast actually paid his bills. Test run complete. And if we hit play here, I mean, we can step through the second one, but you'll see it'll be very similar. This time we have to wait a little longer at the read step, but eventually our read loop does work out. Yeah, so let's just fire this thing. It turns out it works under any circumstances with the constraints we were given. That's just like a real solution. Let's maybe fast forward this a little bit. Hey, there you go. And this is a thing that Zachtronics games, all Zachtronics games do, as far as I'm aware. They compare your solutions to the solutions of all other people who have ever run this puzzle. You can see here, we have a pretty slow solution. A lot of people solved it probably almost exactly the same way we did, but there's another solution available that's a little faster. Size is lines of code, so most people used about the same number of lines of code that we did. Apparently, this is one line of code less than my previous solution, which is interesting. And activity is the number of times that you moved exas from one host to another. Apparently, most people did 4 moves. Can't imagine why. If you moved XB into this system, and then moved XA in here, and then up there, and then back, so maybe like have XA go and fetch the date manually and bring it back to put it in the file so that you don't have to do that clumsy memory transfer and then reverse thing that we did. Yeah, I guess that must be what they're doing. You can also record your solution as a GIF to share with your friends. And these games have a lot of cool features, not competitive features, but features that make you look at your solution and go, huh, people did that like 20 cycles faster, huh? How could they possibly? And so we could go and find another version of this. It's probably, we could have picked up some cycles on some of the solutions by after failing a test for customer ID, instead of checking the next 2 values, which we know can't be a customer ID because we know they're dollars owed and cents owed, having it do a seek 2 before testing again, that would save us a lot of time on any test where Gast's customer ID was not near the top. I bet that's how it gets faster. But yeah, that's the thing. And on each level, you get a little bit of story. I'm not going to show off any of the story stuff. I want you to be able to experience that on your own if you get into the game. But yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's a game about... It's a game kind of about the movie Hackers, and a little bit you are the people from the movie Hackers. And in fact, there is actually a level... Yeah, KGOG TV. There's actually a level where you do the thing that they do in that scene in Hackers. You're fighting over control of a TV station, trying to show your movies for longer than your opponent shows their movies. And one thing that's really neat about this puzzle is that your solutions actually gets uploaded and other people can play against it. So you can see if I press this select opponent button, apparently there are no other connections. I don't know exactly how this works, but I know that this is a puzzle you can actually play against people competitively, which I think is super cool. Also, on any level that your friends have completed, you can see the histograms will show you not just general information, but like specifically, hey, your friends were able to do this in this number of cycles, or with this number of moves, or with this many lines of code. And I think it's always super fun. It's way more compelling to see, like, my friend Mike did this in 214 cycles than it is to see, in general, people are able to do it in 214. Because then I could be like, well, shoot, I'm a better programmer than Mike, right? I could beat that. For the record, I am not a better programmer than my friend Mike. He extremely knows what he's doing. But yeah, that's it. That's what Exapunks is. I really, really dig this game. This is one of my favorite games of 2018. I have not even finished it yet, but I am certainly going to. And I would recommend this to anybody who has even a passing interest in programming as a concept, even if you don't know what you're doing. This game will help you get there, and it will help introduce you to some very important basic concepts, like generality of solutions, or checking the documentation frequently. Things that are really, really valuable. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything else to say. Exapunks is real good.